Hi, folks. So the other day, I came across a question or compound question. It was, how do people handle missing risks in a risk assessment? And how you handle the situation, what can you do to prevent this from happening again? That's a lot there, but it's not an uncommon situation as you may think. Let me elaborate on that. So, how do you or how do people handle missing risks in a risk assessment? If I dissect that question, I probably think, without talking to the individual, that it's not necessarily you missing risks, you're missing vulnerabilities that you did not take in consideration when assessing the overall risk of whatever you're assessing. So it's one of those that we use interchangeably: vulnerability, risk, threats. So they are very defined terms. And I believe here is miss a piece. This individual provides a little bit more context to it. And let me read it here for you. I realized a few months after supporting a piece of work that I didn't go over the AI component of the system. I'm retroactively reviewing and amending the document to reflect it properly, but I'm getting some frustration from stakeholders. So, what can you do in this situation? I would not go back, first of all, and fix what was reported, fix what was published, fix what was given as part of a report out to leadership. Though I would have noted, of course, that the assessment, and I'll do a complementary assessment or something else, or use people skills. Talk to the leadership, saying the risk part of the analysis, one of the element that was missed on the analysis that can change perhaps the risk impact is a miss element that I did not analyze. Having a conversation rather than retroactively fixing that report and see what the best approach is, a give and take relationship. So you're going to have to talk to those individuals and say, hey, would you like me to reassess this? Unfortunately, has been done. Now, fixing this and any future risk assessment that you do, that is more important and where you should place your energy on. First of all, you need to establish a framework and a methodology. Now, a framework is a structure how you provide the basic outline of how you're going to do. And the methodology is basically how you're going to do it. Were you going to do a simple set? You're going to do the entire environment, how you select the targets for your assessment, so on and so forth. And also establish part of the methodology, what you're going to assess. Now, I gave several tips around this on other videos, but in a high level, you will set that methodology, how you're going to do it, and also the framework. The framework should be the same for every application that you do. The one that I like to use, once again, is a mission-based, mission-oriented type of assessment that consider the criticality of that solution and the impact of that solution has on the corporate mission, corporate objectives, and overall ability for the organization to maintain services and provide the products to their clients, to their users and shareholders. So that is what defines how I focus and how I target my assessments. On top of that, I assess 5 classes of assets against the 6 NIST cybersecurity framework function. Having that is my framework, and I'll do that in every assessment. I think you should establish that right at the offset. So this way you don't miss anything. You don't miss an area that, oh, last assessment I did this one and this one I missed. You have, and then you develop the questions for your assessment and you start gathering the quantitative items and also the qualitative items through the interview process, through the meetings. The second one you need to establish is the scope of your assessment. What are you trying to assess? You just not go blindly and say, okay, see what I can find and I'll report. you need to establish scope. And most important, at least my preference, establishing what is out of scope. Because the out of scope preemptively answer any leadership question on, oh, have you considered this? Why you didn't assess this? So you establish, here's my scope, but most important, what is out of scope? What I'm not going to touch because of, due to people, process, technology, time, money, resources, so forth. Because of those, this is the area that I'm not going to dive into it. But future assessments may focus in those areas that have been out of scope now in the future. Something to that effect. Does that make sense? Then next, you're going to focus on your analysis. And that will come because I miss risks on my risk assessment. You miss vulnerabilities. And that part of your analysis says these findings, these vulnerabilities, these weaknesses that I found may impact the overall resilience of the solution, resilience of this tool, and impact the mission of the organization. So you can also do a comparative analysis saying these vulnerabilities against the established standards that I have for the organization, the established industry guidelines, there's a deviation, there's a drift that is a weakness that we have in our environment, the suggestion, and then comes the next piece is the conclusion. Now, well, the conclusion is if we need to align with the industry best standard, we need to align to our own standards to make sure that we have the right security controls in place, we have the right reporting mechanisms that can diminish the risk of the organization in case some of these vulnerabilities realize. So having that, so let me recap what you need. You need a framework, methodology, define scope of your assessment, provide a very thought out analysis, and a conclusion. And part of that conclusion, of course, come recommendations and how are you going to close that loop. Having these elements in place, having these elements documented is even better because this way you're not going to keep forgetting, oh, I missed this piece, I missed that piece, and provide that report out in that fashion. So a lot of things here, right? So how you're going to do it and how you're going to retroactively, I don't recommend, but I do recommend an informal conversation with the leaders of those organizations, the leader of that solution, that application that you did assessment on. Bring him or her in awareness of the piece element that could impact the overall risk that was provided a few months back. And establish a program, a structured program with the elements that we just talked about to avoid any future mishap like this one in the future.